Hello, welcome to Introduction to D2L for our new and adjunct faculty. Really, welcome to the Introduction to D2L for any user of the learning management system. I'm glad you're here. This webinar today is going to walk you through some of the basic uses of the Desire to Learn brightspace learning management system. So in short, a learning management system, often abbreviated LMS, is an opportunity or a website that is designed to facilitate learning. So here at ETSU, we use brightspace to present online courses and online course materials to our students. The learning management system features several different tools that help us do this. We have a content tool, we have several assessment tools that include the gradebook and quizzing, all that fun stuff, and then we have some communication tools to engage and facilitate that collaborative learning experience. So in this webinar, we're going to briefly introduce the learning management system. I'll walk you through the navigation, the content tool, briefly describe and tell a little bit about each assessment tool, and then give you some tips on how to best get started in the learning environment as an instructor. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And what is on your screen now is the D2L My homepage. So one of the first questions that I receive is, how do I get to D2L? Well, you have a couple of options. So I'm just going to open up a new web browser here. So the first option to navigate to D2L is to enter the URL directly. So the URL for the ETSU Learning Management System is elearn.etsu.edu. When I click when I type in elearn, it's going to prompt me to log in. D2L would like for you to enter your ETSU credentials. So that first part of your username or the first part of your email address, and then your ETSU password. Once you have been credentialed and authenticated, D2L will then present you with this My Home screen. So I'm logged in and I see the instructor view. So the instructor view is going to feature a couple of different areas that I want to call your attention to. The first area here is the news tool. So this space is going to be our opportunity from academic technology to present to you important news announcements, to let you know when any sort of downtimes may be so that you can factor those into your course schedules. Any new features, any training opportunities, any D2L specific news related releases will be featured inside of this news tool. It's changing constantly, so you want to log in to the learning environment fairly consistently. I would recommend daily, to make sure that you keep abreast of all news announcements that we provide. A second area that I want to draw your attention to is the D2L training piece. So in this particular section of the website, we're going to post our trainings and the date and times, and then how to join. So we have several different delivery modalities for training. You can come in person and meet with us. You can join a webinar, or you can watch a training asynchronously. It's whatever works best for both your learning style as well as your schedule. The third widget that I want to call your attention to is this My Courses widget, and it's going to be the larger of the widgets. And a widget in D2L is just a space where content resides. The My Courses widget is going to feature all of the classes that you have access to regardless of your role. So I'm able to see all classes that I'm enrolled in as a student, as an instructor, as a guest, teacher assistant, grader. It doesn't matter the role, all of my classes will appear here. One thing that's important to note is that as an instructor, you have administrative access to your courses, which means you have the ability to open your course, close your course, build out your course in any way that you see fit. You also have the ability to see that the course exists regardless of its open and closed dates. Now that's different from students in that students see only their active courses. So for example, at the beginning of a fall semester, students see only their fall courses, their current course schedule. They would not see their summer courses, past spring, or past fall courses. So that's something to keep in mind. Instructors have access to the course regardless of if it's open or closed. Students have access to only open and active courses. You also have the ability to use this course search icon. This is the 9-square grid located at the top of your page. This is also going to present you with a list of courses that you have access to regardless of role. So in this list, you can quickly jump into a course. You can switch from one course to the other. You also see the pin icons. These pin icons allow you to freeze a particular course to the top of your list. So this is advantageous in that when a semester rolls around, so maybe you taught some classes in the spring and now you're gearing up for your fall classes, you can pin your fall classes to the top of your course search list. This way, whenever you click back on that 9-square grid, your fall classes are going to be at the top of the list. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a course here because that's pretty much all you can do on this My Home page is get into your classes, see which classes you have access to, and then take a look at some of the training opportunities that we have for you. I'm going to go ahead and using this course search menu option, I'm going to jump into a particular class. Each class that's available in our Gold Link system, so Gold Link is our student portal, it's where students go to register, it's where you go to enter grades, it keeps official course roster, so it's the official student information system. In Gold Link, you have your list of classes. Every class in Gold Link also has a D2L counterpart. So at the beginning of each semester, you are assigned courses to teach, and those courses should automatically populate in your D2L course site. If there's an issue with that automation, all you have to do is reach out to our office and we can correct that issue and get you enrolled in the classes that you have been assigned to teach. When you first click on a course in D2L, you'll notice that it's completely empty. There's no course content that's automatically populated for you. Each course will be presented as this blank or empty shell, and you have the authority and access to add to it and expand on it in any way that you see fit or comfortable. That's going to help your students reach those course objectives that you've set for them. The navigation bar is available in each course and it stays frozen to the top of the screen here. I'm circling the navigation bar with my mouse, and this navigation bar is going to stay the same regardless of which course that you are currently in. The navigation bar is grouped by function. So what I mean by that is any menu option where you see a downward facing arrow houses multiple tools. So if I expand the evaluation link group, I can see all the tools that you can use to evaluate your students. So that means that the assessments tool or the quiz tool is able to allow you to evaluate your students. We can host graded discussions. We can collect electronic work using our Dropbox, and we can present students with grades and progress reports using the D2L gradebook. The communication link group houses all the tools that you need to facilitate communication among your class. You have the calendar. The calendar is automatically populated, and we'll see that in just a moment. You have your class list. This is your opportunity to see who's in your class and what role they have in your class. We have the discussion board again because it's also a communication tool that can be assessed or evaluated. The groups tool is your opportunity to break your course list into smaller sections. This is advantageous for those larger classes where you're going to facilitate some smaller and more intimate group discussions. The groups tool allows for you to break the students up manually, or you can allow the system to automatically randomize and generate your small groups. After you have groups created, you can then restrict specific content or assessments to those particular groups. It's a very handy tool. We actually have an entire workshop on using the groups tool and facilitating group restricted assignments. The news tool is actually connected to your news widget, and you see your news widget on the course homepage. This is actually your opportunity to start a conversation with your students about what your expectations are inside of this class. We recommend that you post a welcome announcement. This welcome announcement can be in any modality. It can be a text, video, or something else. And in that welcome announcement, we want you to welcome your students to the class. Introduce yourself, introduce your credentials for teaching the class, and give the students a little bit of information about what the class is going to be about. So for example, if I were going to teach English composition, I would welcome the students to class, present my name, tell them my credentials, and then walk them through each of the 4 essays that we're going to construct in that English composition class. I'll talk about the importance of each style of writing and how I'm going to work with them to improve or grow in their writing ability and confidence levels. I then, in my welcome announcement, will tell them a way to get started. It's always a great idea in terms of instructional design of online courses to guide your students through the material. Remember that your students are there to learn your material, so any barrier that you can take away or alleviate is going to help them achieve that goal. So right off the bat, tell them how to get started. So for example, it could be as simple as saying, to get started, click on the content tool link located in the navigation bar. This is going to tell the students, okay, I need to go somewhere else in order to continue on in the material. To create a news announcement, you can do that one of 2 ways. If it's your first news announcement, you can simply click on this create a news announcement link that I am highlighting with my cursor. If it's not, you can use this context arrow drop-down menu to choose new news item from the list of options. I'm going to go ahead and click on new news item, and I'll be prompted with 2 required areas. D2L wants me to specify a headline and then some content. I would think of this mostly like an email, so your headline is often your subject, and then your content is the body of your email message or your message to students. For example, if I were talking about, or if I were going to create that welcome announcement, I would say, welcome to class. And then in the body of my news announcement, I would then communicate to the students what this course is going to be about. Again, remember to introduce yourself, introduce your course, and tell the students how to get started. So those are the 3 key components. After I compile or compose my news announcement, I'm going to go down, scroll down the page, and have an availability setting here. Availability in D2L translates to visibility. Can students see this or not? By default, the start date or the date that students can begin seeing the announcement is going to be today, the current time. You can actually stagger the rollout of your news announcements. You can actually build out the entire semester's worth of news announcements by giving each news announcement a separate start date. The news announcement will not appear to your students until the start date and time has passed. Likewise, you can add an end date to remove student access from that news item. This is something I typically don't recommend. I would typically recommend my instructors to keep all news announcements visible. That way students can have an opportunity to go back and look at them if they need to. But you can add an end date by simply checking on the end date box and selecting your date and time from the calendar option. You're able to add attachments here. Again, I would probably recommend adding content in a different way that I'll show you next. But you can add single file attachments. So this could be a flyer to a relevant activity or event that's happening that's also related to your course. It could be some sort of other advertisement or material. What I would caution you against, though, is attaching, using this attach space in the news announcement, attaching any required course content. So I would dissuade the practice of attaching your syllabus, attaching assignment guidelines, templates, anything like that that the student truly has to have. There is a better and more efficient home for that in the content tool. So this attachments tool is mostly for announcements that are not required of your class. Release conditions also restrict and control visibility. Most often you would not need to place any release conditions, and release conditions are covered in a separate workshop. The publish button, clicking the publish button will publish your news item so that you and your students can see that news item. Saving the news item as a draft saves your work, but only you or other instructors in your course can access the news item and then have it published. I'm going to go ahead and click publish here. And I can now see that I have a news announcement here. The start date is going to signify when my students can see the date or see the news announcement. The end date is going to signify when the students can no longer see the news announcement. and the status is alerting me that this is published and ready to go. If I click back on my course homepage, I'm able to see my published news announcement here. Notice that my subject or headline is blue and underlined, and then the content or body of my news announcement is listed down below. One thing that's important to remember is you will see an X on each news announcement. This X is the dismiss icon. Dismissing does not delete the news announcement from your student's view. Instead, dismiss simply collapses a news item for you as an individual user. So clicking the X will not take this news item away from your student's view. Instead, if you needed to truly delete the item, you would need to use either the context menu to choose delete, or go back into your news tool, check the checkbox for a particular news item, and click the delete action icon there. So I just want to reiterate, this is a question that we get relatively often. The X on a news announcement does not delete it. It only dismisses it from a single user's view. Okay? All right. The role switch icon that's also located on the course homepage is your opportunity to view your course as a student. So we get a lot of instructors who are a bit wary about what their course looks like. Is my course working for students? Are students able to access this, that, or the other? This role switch widget gives you the ability to view or test out your course as though a student would. All you would need to do is simply click the My Role or the downward arrow, choose Student, and then click the Change Role button. You notice that when you are in role switching, the user icon up at the top right-hand side of your page will alert you to the role that you're currently impersonating. So I see here that my training role is now viewing this course as a student would. So you're able to see that there's no way to delete a news item here. The students can go also back to the news tool, but they're just seeing a list of your news items. And there's some other permissions that students don't have. If you are finished role switching, all you have to do is simply click your name at the top of your page and then choose the X or the Stop Viewing as Student icon. Okay. The next couple of widgets on the right-hand side of the page are the updates, bookmarks, and calendars. These are automatically populated by actions that you take in the learning environment. So updates would assume that you have placed some dates on a particular piece of content or learning activity, and D2L is encouraging students that they have, or reminding students that they have an activity that's coming due. Bookmarks are very similar to an internet browser's favorites. So students or yourself could bookmark particular items in your course so that they can have easy access. You are not able to bookmark items on behalf of your students. This is also a user-specific area. The calendar tool is automatically populated. You should not have to have manually entered dates in your calendar, and we can talk about some of that in a later workshop as well. But dates that you place on learning activities are automatically then sent to the calendar and synced up so that students are receiving automatic updates. They're able to see what a snapshot of their week was looking like so that they can then plan accordingly. So that's all that there is on the course homepage. The content tool is the heart of your class. So this is where you will essentially build your class and your course's learning experience for your students. When you first navigate to the content tool, it will be empty and you will be prompted with this message that says, "Welcome to your course." Once you begin adding course content, this message will disappear. This page is broken up into two separate sections. You have your table of contents on the left-hand side of the page. This is going to give you a list of modules and submodules in your course. The larger section of your course content tool, this actionable region here on the middle right, is your students' ability to navigate through your course. Ideally, we can build a course in this learning management system so that students do not have to navigate away from this page. Making sure that your course is set up in an intuitive and easy to navigate fashion definitely improves student satisfaction and student experience in your course. And so we spend a lot of time talking about what your course should look like. So let's talk about what your course should look like as we're introducing the content tool. So I mentioned earlier that the table of contents section is going to list module and submodule names. So you may be asking yourself, what's a module? In this particular learning management system, a module is simply a folder of materials. You must create a module before you're able to add any content to your course. If you notice, there's no way to add like a syllabus, assignment guides, anything like that to the course. There's no actionable regions here. So I'm going to click inside of this add a module text box here, and I'm going to create my first module or folder so that I can get started building my course. I'm going to simply single click inside of add a module, and then I'll type in course information. After I finish typing, I'm going to press my enter key on my keyboard, and that module will then automatically be created. It will also open up into this larger workspace. This larger workspace then presents me with the action items I need to build out my course. So inside of my course information module, it may be nice to include my syllabus for my course. You're able to add documents to the course or add any piece of content to your course using this blue New button. And as you can see on your screen, the ability to add different types of files and links is pretty limitless. You can upload files from your computer. This is exactly what it says it is. This is your opportunity to browse your personal computer that you're on currently, grab a file from either the desktop or your My Documents or wherever that you've saved your files, and then place a copy of that document into your course so that students can view it. You're also able to link to video or audio components. So this is a great option if you have some YouTube videos that you've created, or you have another multimedia content piece that you would like to incorporate in your course. The only hesitation here is that we do not recommend uploading raw video or audio files into your course. Instead, work with us to place those files on a streaming server or just find a better home for them so that the playability and usability of the piece is improved for students. You can create a file. So this is your opportunity to create an HTML file inside of the learning environment. This can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be or as your comfort level allows. Creating a file in D2L assumes that you will be typing inside of our WYSIWYG editor. You can format your file or you can format your information to be more visually appealing to your students. You can simply leave it as unformatted text. It's whatever your comfort level allows. Creating a link is your opportunity to create a link to an external resource for your students. So this option is going to communicate that the students will be navigating away from the learning environment. Adding from Manage Files. Manage Files is D2L's file repository. And I would think of Manage Files as your course library. We don't see a lot of add from Manage Files opportunities in this particular course build, but just know that it is there for you to use. The options that you see below this faintly colored line that include new checklist, discussion, Dropbox, these items here, those are quick ways to add different content pieces to your course. And I would actually not recommend creating any of these items from this new button. So if you want to create a checklist, my recommendation is always to create the checklist from the checklist tool. If you want to create a discussion, go to your discussion board and create it, and we'll look at some of those as well. But for now, I'm actually going to upload a syllabus file. I can choose New, Upload Files, and then I'm presented with this option to pick where the file is living. Currently, this file is living on my computer, and then I'm going to choose the Upload button once more. Upload is going to bring up my Windows Explorer. It's going to bring up your Finder if you're on a Mac. And I can look to see where my file is. Now, I know that I have uploaded my accessible syllabus here, so I'm going to double click on my file now that I've located it, and then I'll choose the blue Add button in the lower left corner of the screen. Once my file has been uploaded, I can click on the title of it to test it, and D2L has the capacity to preview any Office doc or any Word or PowerPoint or PDF file. So if you have an Excel file or if you have a narrated PowerPoint, something that's a little bit more interactive, D2L does not have the capacity to preview that. But if you are sharing documents like Word files or PDF files, D2L can preview the file here. Sometimes it takes a little bit, as you can see from the loading icon here, but once it loads, and I'm just going to refresh my screen here, once it loads, the student is able to then see the file. The student cannot interact with it, but the student can always download the file. So downloading the file is going to give them a local copy of that file. I'm going to click back on Table of Contents here. Now you see here that my syllabus that I've recently uploaded, the naming convention is very poor. We never recommend naming conventions that have special characters like these hyphens, erroneous spacing, or numbering and naming conventions. Keep in mind that something that is intuitive to you in terms of a naming or numbering convention may not be intuitive for your students. So we always recommend that you rename any of the content that you place in D2L to something that is more intuitive for your students. In order to rename a content piece, we'll use that content arrow and then choose Edit Properties in Place. This Edit Properties in Place is going to allow me to single click on my syllabus name and rename it to something a little bit more intuitive for my students. So once I finish renaming my file, I'm going to press Enter on my keyboard. And now my file, if I refresh my screen, is named more intuitively for my students. So they know this is my syllabus. They don't care if it is version 3.2.1. They don't care if it's for whatever. They need to know where's the syllabus for this class. So having and using an intuitive naming convention is always something that we support and recommend. I'm going to go back to that Edit Properties in Place to show you a couple of other options. So inside of Edit Properties for a particular content file, you have dates and restrictions, descriptions, and then a status. Status is your ability to hide content from students. So when you upload a file, by default, the students can see the file. It's published. So the status for a file that you upload is published. If you do not want students to see the file, you would want to save it or mark it as a draft. Marking a file as a draft hides that file from the student. So what I mean by that is, as an instructor, I'm able to see that the file exists here. I note that it's in draft mode. But if using my role switching widget, I change to student to preview my course, when I go back to content, I do not see my syllabus any longer. So your status of content files controls student visibility. So whether or not a student can see that an item exists. To change a file back to published, simply click on the word draft from the workspace and choose published. You're able to draft or hide individual files as well as entire modules. A couple of things about modules that I want to call your attention to. It is our recommendation in terms of instructional design to have one content module per week. Then in each of those weekly content modules, include objectives for that particular week. What do you want the students to be able to do, or what do you hope that the student would have learned during that particular week? But also maybe some narrative about how that particular week relates back to the overall course's objectives. So what is the relevance of the content in this particular week? You have to, not have to, but we would recommend that you provide some justification for every item that's in your weekly module structure. So for example, it's not uncommon for instructors to add a lecture content in several different modalities. Maybe they have a lecture content video that they've recorded, but then they have their lecture presentation slides. Well, what is your intention for your students? How do you want your students to interact with those two different things? Do you want them to watch your lecture video and then also read the PowerPoint slides? Are the slides optional and the student can view them if they want to? So you need to articulate what the purpose and intention is for each of those pieces of content. And then also, how do they relate back to the weekly objectives as well as the module objectives? Placing that course narrative helps students justify the why of your course. Why is this important? Why should I care about this? And there's several different ways that you can place the text so that you're wrapping your course content in contextual narrative. I'm going to go back to my course information module here, and you notice that now you see a 1. This 1 designates that there is one piece of content in this particular module. If I were to add a link, so for example, I'm going to create a link to the ETSU website. I'm going to, in my URL field, just enter that ETSU URL. If I am linking to any external website, and by external I mean something not within D2L, I need to check the Open as External Resource button. If I do not click this button, the link has the opportunity to not work as I have intended. So I'm going to click Create. And if I follow my breadcrumb here, I'm just going to go back to my table of contents. And now you see that this number has jumped up to 2, signifying that there are now 2 pieces of content in this particular course information module. On the student side, this number acts as a way for students to check off, or a checklist as to show the number of items they have not yet opened. So the number of items for the student view will go down each time they open a particular piece of content for your course. The third option I want to show you from the News button is the Create a File. This is actually one of the ways that we strongly encourage and recommend instructors to build content in your course. And this is for a couple of reasons. Creating a file in HTML allows the student to not have to use any other softwares to engage or read the file. It improves usability in that it opens immediately. You saw in the past that the document seemed to spin and load, and there was a little bit of issue with usability there, just performance issues. If you create a file in HTML, then you are eliminating that barrier. The student will open the file automatically. They don't have to use any sort of software to open the file, and there's no waiting or hesitation. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to title a file Week 1 Assignment Instructions. So this title is, again, something that I need to be intentional and about when I'm naming it. I need it to be intuitive, I need it to relate and be consistent throughout my course. So if I use this Week 1 assignment instructions here, for weeks 2 through 15, I need to also use Week 1 assignment instructions, like just to be consistent throughout. This is also the text that the student will click on in order to see or view your file. Now in this box here, this is our HTML content box. You are able to simply type in your information. You can insert or embed materials. You can insert pictures. You can link to other items. You can use the formatting ribbon here at the top of the box to help make your content a little bit more visually dynamic. But in essence, you will simply type your text here. And once you are complete, once you've finished up, then all you need to do is click either publish or draft. And again, we go back to those statuses. Publish means that the student can see it. Draft means that the student can't. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. So I'm going to click publish, and you'll see here that the text displays. There was no hesitation, no waiting. It was immediately available for students. Some instructors may be hesitant to create their course in this kind of text-based system because they feel that it's important that students be able to print their course content. Just know that students can print anything. They can print a Word document, they can print a website, they can print anything. But they're not going to be able to print it if they can't open it. So this is a great way to improve the accessibility and usability of your course by just creating your course content using that create a file option. So I'm going to go back again, tracing my breadcrumb back to table of contents. I'm able to see now that I have 3 items in my course information. But my week 1 assignment instructions here doesn't seem to fit in my general course information. It actually should go inside of my week 1 content folder or module. In order to move content items from one place to the other, I'll simply use these 2 dotted lines to the left of the content topic title. And you notice that my cursor changes to crosshairs. If I click, hold, and drag that topic, you can see a line jumping around. If I move it down to this dotted box, it's going to turn blue. It's going to signify that I'm going to drop this content file from my course information into week 1. So I'm going to release my mouse, and I have successfully moved my content from one module to another. This is actually going to work if you want to reorder your items. So if I wanted the ETSU website to be my first content topic, I would simply click, hold, and grab that 2 dotted lines and wait until my blue line is above my composition syllabus. If I release my mouse, then I have successfully reordered. It's important to note that this is the only way to reorder your content topics. If I am needing to delete content, if I find that maybe the ETSU, a link to the ETSU website, the students didn't visit this particular link at all, so it may be advantageous to remove it from my class. To delete a content topic, I simply click the downward arrow for that topic and choose Delete Topic. I'm prompted with this screen. It's going to give me the option to remove the topic from content but keep the file, or permanently delete both. Selecting this top option, remove the topic but keep the file, is my ability to get the file back if I want to add it to my course again. If I know for a fact that I'm not going to use this piece of content, or in this case a link, ever again, I can safely choose permanently delete. Now keep in mind that it will permanently delete, so this means that it's irreversible and it would be very difficult to recover that file. So I'm going to go ahead and click delete there, and I have successfully deleted my content topic. But what if I need to delete an entire module? So for example, I'm going to create a module labeled example. Maybe I need to delete the module. So if you notice from my table of contents view, so clicking on table of contents again will show you the list of your modules. There's no arrow for module level actions. I see my content topic level arrow. I can change it, edit it, delete it, all that good stuff. But I don't see those same options for my module. Actually, when I click on a module, it collapses and rolls up all that content into a kind of accordion style. Now, it doesn't mean that the students don't have access to it. It just means that they would have to click the week 1 module in order to see the content. But I'm not able to delete a module. The only way to delete a module in D2L is to first open that module. And I'm going to open the module by simply clicking on its name over in my table of contents view. So I've opened up this example module. I know that I have an individual module open because the example naming convention is at the top of my screen. From here, I can rename my module, or using its context arrow that I now have, I can delete the module. So again, this is the only way to delete a module. I'll walk through that again. So from my table of contents view, I'm going to click on the module that I need to delete, and then using its context arrow, I'm going to choose Delete Module. I'll be prompted with those same opportunities here. I'm going to choose Permanently Delete, and then click delete again. So it's going to initialize and then delete my module from my content tool completely. So now I'm back to my course information and week 1. I can also reorder modules. You notice that the dotted lines are appearing at the to the left of each module within my table of contents. I'm able to move an entire module up above one another to reorder. So now week 1 is coming first. If I need to reverse that or put course information back on top, I just grab it and draw it up until I see that blue line. The blue line is indicating where the module is going to be moved to. Now you notice that if I click and drag and I've accidentally hovered on top of a module, that module is going to turn blue. If I were to release my mouse here, my week 1 module would be placed inside of my course information module, creating a submodule. This is typically not something that we recommend because, again, usability would require the students to click down into 2 different spaces in order to retrieve their content. Our objective as online instructors is to remove barriers for student content. So we don't typically recommend submodules unless it's a case where that organizational structure would benefit your course. So I need to actually move this week 1 module back outside of course information so it can stand alone. All I need to do is, again, with the grabber icon, just simply click, hold, and drag it back to its rightful position beneath course information. Releasing my mouse will complete that action. Okay. So we have covered creating a module, uploading a file, creating a link, deleting content topics, deleting modules, renaming both modules and topics. So that's a lot. Just know that the best advice I can give in terms of building out your course are the following. First, create a weekly module structure. Have 1 week for each content section, or have 1 module for each weekly content section. Within that weekly module, place all the content that is required of the students in a consistent and intuitive manner. Be mindful of all of your naming conventions, especially when you go to bring in scholarly articles, links to external websites. You need to be able to communicate to the students what it is that they're getting ready to click on, why they're clicking on it, and what to do after they've clicked on it. So those are your charges as an online instructor, guiding your students through the material. Now this is not the same as you constructing the new information for them. This is eliminating barriers so that your students can then go and be exposed to new content, and through that constructivist learning style, build their new knowledge. You are simply eliminating barriers. So again, weekly module structure, intuitive naming conventions, consistent naming conventions. Whatever you call the thing in the content tool, make sure that is repeated across your assessment tools, gradebook, news items, emails, all that good stuff. Consistency is key here. Okay. The last thing I want to show you is a link to a YouTube video. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a YouTube video here by searching for our D2L faculty YouTube resources. Okay, and I'm going to grab this URL. So I have this link here, and I am needing to place this video into my course. I'm going to simply copy the web URL from YouTube, and using the new button, choose video or audio. I can simply place the URL, paste the URL. I may need to change my topic if it's something that's not intuitive. For these types of multimedia content, I always like to tell the student what kind of content they're getting ready to open. So this is a video. If I click save, what happens is the student is able to watch my video without ever having to leave the learning environment. That's what we're going for here. We're going for a consistent navigation structure where the student doesn't have to hunt around for the content that you're needing to expose them to. You have provided a link, it opens automatically, and there are no barriers as to the student being able to retrieve the content. This is hugely advantageous because this video lives on YouTube, or it can live on a separate streaming site. D2L has not been charged with trying to play that video. D2L is not a multimedia server, so we need to make sure that our videos are living elsewhere and that we're bringing them in through that audio or video link. So this is one way to add a video to your course, and you can see here that it signifies that it's a video, it's separate from a web page, all of those things. But what if I wanted to create this dynamic piece of content that had some interactive elements in it? Maybe I wanted to provide my students with some narrative about watching this video. What if I needed an opportunity to speak to my students before or while they're watching the video? Well, I can come back to this HTML page. Again, that was new, create a file. I can edit it by clicking this edit HTML. And so I'm brought back here to this enter text. So here is my opportunity to engage with my students. So this is very similar to if I were standing in a face-to-face classroom. What am I going to say to introduce this video? Why are we watching it? What should I alert the students to call their attention to in the video? So maybe you want to call attention to a particular scene in a video, or a particular minute mark in a video. This is your opportunity to create that dialogue with your students. So use the HTML file to present your content, to present your narrative and your justification, but then use or embed your video so that they can view the justification and the video all on one screen. So how do you do that? Well, first, I'm going to go back to my YouTube video. So here I have my YouTube video, and I want to embed it. And embedding simply means that I want to place this content in another website. To do so, I'm going to look for the share option. I'm going to click share, and YouTube is going to give me the option to embed. Now keep in mind, this process changes often, so it may be different tomorrow, but just know that you're looking for the embed code. This is not something that you have to know. You don't have to know what any of this means. All you need to know is how to copy it. So I'm going to single click to select it, click the copy option, and then I'm going to jump back to my D2L website. From here, I want to place my cursor exactly where I want the video to be displayed. So I'm fine with the cursor being here. And I'm going to choose this Insert Stuff button, aptly named, of course. Click that Insert Stuff button, and you see now I have an Enter Embed code. I didn't choose YouTube because this would make me have to find the video again, and I find that this search mechanism here is not as user-friendly. I'm going to enter embed code. I'm going to simply paste that code, click Next, and my video is going to be previewed here. So when I click Insert, my video displays directly on this page. I'm able to center it. Let's say that I wanted to center it for whatever reason. I'm able to center it. I'm able to add text above it. I'm able to add text below it. And now my students have the opportunity to not only engage with me through the text that I've given them, but to watch the video and then move on to either their reflective piece, some sort of assessment piece, and my course remains fluid. They didn't have to go to YouTube to find the video. They weren't charged with finding something and bringing it back. I presented them with my expertise, my direction, my navigation, my justification, presented them with the content, and then their opportunity to reflect or be assessed. Okay? So I'm going to click Update here. And you see now I have my text up here. I have my video here. Students can watch it. It's closed caption, all that good stuff. I have text down here. So this is all done by using that create a file HTML file. Okay. So that hits on creating content in your course. So we have covered several different ways to add content. So you can upload files to add any file extension in your course. You can use video or audio to embed video and audio from other locations. And again, just to reiterate, we never want you to directly add an MP3, 4, or other video or audio content directly to your course. If you have some content, you don't know where to house it, contact us and we're happy to help with that. We created a file. So we created that HTML file. We were able to provide our students with some narrative, to engage in some dialogue, and to give them additional interactive or multimedia content. We created links. We created a link to the ETSU website so that students can go out to a website and maybe filter through some of the pages looking for some information. Now let's talk about assessing our students. So we've created this content. It's our intention that our students have completed the content or gone through the content in some way, in some meaningful way. And so now, what do we do to assess them? Now, because this is an intro webinar, I'm just going to lightly touch on the assessment tools. We're not going to go into how to create them or anything like that, but I will show you some resources that will do just that. We'll walk you through the creation of every single assessment type. Okay? So I'm going to jump into my evaluation menu. I'm going to first go to the Dropbox. The Dropbox is D2L's electronic assignment repository. So what that means is if you are requesting that students turn something into you, maybe you have assigned them an essay, or maybe they have some sort of lab report, so they are turning in something to you in a digital space. How do you accept that? Well, in D2L, you would create a Dropbox folder. Creating a Dropbox folder is as simple as selecting new folder from the Dropbox folders page. I'm going to name my assignment number 1. And then I'm going to use this instructions box to place my instructions. So this is an overview of what your expectations are for your students. You need to be clear in what you expect them to do, how you expect them to turn it in, what format they need to turn it in. Again, eliminate barriers. Any questions that you can think of that students may ask you, go ahead, take care of it in your assignment instructions. That way you can devote more of your time to engaging with your students and creating that community of learning. So place assignment instructions inside of or attached to your Dropbox assignment. This is advantageous for so many reasons, but mostly because this instruction space is dynamic. Students see this space in multiple locations, but you as the instructor only have to update it in one location. And I'm all for that. Anytime that I can create information and then have it disseminated automatically into multiple locations, that I'm going to champion that effort because it's much less upkeep on the instructor's behalf. So I'm going to place my assignment instructions here. Again, you can call out different headings, you can provide examples, whatever you think would be the most beneficial for the student to complete the assignment. Inside of your assignment type, most commonly you will use individual assignment. That just means that you expect each student to turn in his or her own work. Most of these other options can be saved or kept as the default, but I do want to draw your attention to the evaluation and feedback section. This is your opportunity to provide a point value. So how much is this assignment worth? So it wouldn't be uncommon for every assignment to be out of 100. And then here in this grade items section, you can actually connect this Dropbox to the gradebook. Now that's advantageous for several reasons, but the most important one is when you grade the assignment, it automatically goes, that grade automatically is imported into your gradebook and then calculated and factored into the student's running calculation of grades. Hugely beneficial. We always recommend that all learning activities, and by learning activity I mean that anything the student has to do that you grade, all learning activities associated or connected to a gradebook item, okay? Now you see here that we have no gradebook items to select. That's because we haven't created our gradebook yet. But what D2L allows us to do is to create a new grade item. So I can create my gradebook as I'm building out my assignments. So again, here's my assignment 1, consistent naming convention. I call this assignment 1 in the content tool. I've called it assignment 1 Dropbox. Call it assignment 1 in the gradebook. Again, I'm going to give it a maximum points of 100. I don't have to worry about weight right now. We can talk about that later. And then click Save. We don't cover rubrics in this workshop, but we also strongly recommend that you attach a grading rubric anytime you have a written assignment. If you're requiring a student to submit a writing assignment that you will then grade subjectively, a rubric is so helpful. It's helpful for you as you're going to grade the student submissions. It's helpful for students so that they know what your expectation is. What do you mean by 100? Like what does a an A paper look like? What does a B paper look like? What does a C paper not have or lack? A rubric is your opportunity to express and articulate that. So we can add a rubric here. The other thing I want to touch on just briefly is turn it in. Turn it in is D2L's originality checking. Again, not plagiarism checking. We can never determine a student's intention, but we can compare to see if a student submission is original or not. So if I click on my Turn It In tab, I have to first enable grade mark. This is just my ability to potentially grade in Turn It In. I don't have to use this, but I do have to check it so that my originality check can be checked. Checking this enable originality check for this folder associates this particular assignment to Turn It In. So what that means is when a student submits an assignment, Turn It In will automatically compare it against scholarly journal articles, websites, and other student work that was also submitted to Turn It In. That way you're able to see a side-by-side comparison of what Turn It In discovered was maybe not as original. Maybe the student needed some help paraphrasing, or maybe something was a little bit more blatant and you have an opportunity to then have a conversation with the student. Again, Turn It In does not measure intention. It only measures originality. So is something original or not? And then we'll give you the information you can have to then have a conversation with the students. The display icon, checking display, gives students the ability to see their originality score. This is hugely beneficial. I'm never an advocate for using Turn It In as a punitive tool. I'm always an advocate for using it as a teaching tool. So I want to be transparent with my students. And part of that transparency means that I'm going to allow them to see their Turn It In scores as well. Okay, so I've checked grade mark so that I'm able to then check the enable originality check. And then I'm also going to turn on the ability for my students to see that. I'm going to go up to the restrictions tab. I can also from here add a due date. So this is amazing in that I can add a due date. So I'm going to add it for the 14th of June. And I'm going to choose maybe 11:59 p.m. I'm just going to type it in. Now, I'm going to save and close. So what does that look like for students? So myself and my students see that the Dropbox is named Assignment 1, so I know that I need to submit stuff for Assignment 1 here. It is connected to Turn It In, so students automatically see that it's going to be evaluated by Turn It In, but it's also connected to the gradebook. And I'm able to see the due date. Keep in mind that this due date doesn't change automatically with the semester, so it's something that you're going to have to maintain. But placing this due date on the box automatically inserts that due date into the student calendar. So remember when we looked at course home, the student was able to see that there are some assignments coming up, and look here, here's an upcoming event. The assignment 1 is due June 14th at midnight. So the student can essentially click on this item and be taken to assignment 1 so that they can then submit the assignment to me. That's great, right? So all of that was done simply by creating new folder, giving it a name, assigning it to a grade item, assigning in a due date, and turning on Turn It In. And it took what? A couple minutes, not hard. So if you ever need help with that, we are more than happy to help you. And we also offer some workshops on D2L and Turn It In integration to give you a little bit more information on what that integration looks like. How can you handle that information? How can you interpret it? Okay. The last thing I want to do here is I need to give my students a way to submit the file. Sure, they could come to the evaluation menu and choose Dropbox. But again, we're eliminating barriers. So I'm going to go to my content tool. And inside of my week 1, I have my week 1 assignment instructions, my week 1 video. I'm going to place a link to my Dropbox so that students can go through my week 1 content and at the end of the week be ready to submit. So how do I do that? I'm going to use Add Existing Activities. Using Add Existing Activities allows me to create links to learning activities in the learning environment. I'm going to choose the tool first. So I'm going to click Add Existing Activities and I'm going to choose the tool. Once I choose the tool, I'm able to see all of the drop boxes that I've created. I'm going to simply click on this assignment 1 and look, 2 things happen. if I'm in my week 1 folder, my student sees my week 1 assignment, like maybe what I need them to do this week. I'm going to see the video or the piece of content that I'm needing them to view. I see the assignment, what I need to submit, but look here. Here's the instructions to the assignment. So that dynamic place where they go, or we can put information so that it's showing up in multiple locations. These assignment instructions are right here. They're right here on the page where the student goes to submit work to you. Really nice way to have your student walk through each weekly module without having to kind of hunt around in the learning environment. So that's the Dropbox, fairly easy tool. Another easy tool is the discussion board. So the discussion board in D2L is your opportunity to create a scenario of asynchronous conversation. So students will be logging in throughout the week or throughout the time period that you've allowed, and will be posting either their original thoughts or comments to their peers. And you can facilitate that. You can go in, you can maybe encourage the student to dive deeper into a particular thought or area. You can steer a student in a separate or opposite direction if you see that they're kind of going off course about something. You can engage with your students as much. We have instructors who love to be very active in the discussion board, and then we have other instructors who prefer that be the student area. It's really whatever you feel most comfortable with. But let's talk about how to just create one. Creating a discussion involves 2 things. You have to create a forum and then a topic. A forum is very similar to a module. And remember, a module is just basically a folder that holds stuff. So I'm going to create a forum here that's labeled weekly discussions. Maybe in this class I'm going to have them discuss something on a weekly basis. So my forum, my folder, is going to be called weekly discussions. And get this, I'm going to save and close. That's literally all there is. So I have my folder, my forum here. And so now I need to start adding spaces where students can interact. Because if you notice, there's no way to interact with weekly forums. It's not actionable, right? The discussion topics are the areas where students engage. That's where all of that discussion activity is taking place. So let's go ahead and create a topic. So from the new button, I'm going to choose new topic. And then I'm going to first choose a forum. So every topic has to have a forum. I'm going to choose weekly discussions. And week 1 discussion. And then I'm going to say topic area. So week 1 discussion, we're going to be discussing, maybe if we keep with the English composition narrative writing. Okay. So that's my title. And then my description, the purpose of my description is to house what I'm wanting the students to talk about and what my expectations are of their posts. So there's really 2 things. So first, you need to create your prompt or scenario. What are your students discussing? Why is it important? How is it connected to your content overall? How is it connected to your course objectives? Is it going to be one of these application to practice discussions? We love seeing those where you've read the content, or the student has read the content, and now you are giving them a case study or a scenario where they have to apply that knowledge. So they're not simply asking questions that have a for sure right or wrong answer. They're being able to apply a particular knowledge set that they've acquired onto a particular scenario or event. So we have a space for you to create some open-ended questions that encourage dialogue, that encourage that back and forth. So we have to create the prompt for them. So create the prompt or the scenario, case study, whatever it is that you're wanting to create. But then the second part of this is hugely important. What are your expectations of their posts? I'm just going to type that out. So what are your expectations? Should they post once, twice, 3 times? How long? What should the post include? Should they hit on these 3 key areas? You need to be explicit. The more explicit you are in what your expectations are, the better the likelihood that the students are going to deliver just that. So let's talk about what your expectations are. Keep in mind that students are typing in the same box that you see on your screen. There's no way to double space. There's not really a way to do hanging indent or anything like that. So you want to be mindful that you're not setting the student up to be unable to give you what you need in terms of format. Discussion boards are fairly informal in terms of format. There's not a lot that the student can do. So be aware of, if you are wanting them to have some sort of APA or other MLA or other citation style formatting, that may not be appropriate for the discussion board. If you're wanting that kind of formality, you may instead be describing a Dropbox assignment. Discussions are for that informal dialogue back and forth. Now, by informal, I don't mean not academic. It can definitely still be an academic conversation. But just remember that the students have the same white text box that you do, and it's not always easy to get the formatting right. So formatting, I would recommend being a little bit more lenient on. The content is what you care about. You want to know that the students are applying the knowledge that they've learned. So you have to create your prompt scenario, but then you have to tell what your expectations are. And how do you do that? Or how do you do it well? Well, we can talk about that in just a second. The options here I want to call your attention to are really nice. Allow anonymous posts. I don't typically recommend that. We don't see it used a lot. We also don't see this second option, the moderator must approve. This means that you as the instructor must check off or sign off on every single post that is posted to the discussion board. Otherwise, students aren't able to see them. So that charges you with a little bit more work, and I don't typically recommend that. But this third option I do recommend. Users must start a thread before they can read or reply to others. So this is your opportunity to encourage original thought. My student A must post to the discussion board before he can see student B, C, or D's posts. So they're not able to just regurgitate a separate student's answer. They have to be prompted to create that original thought and that original post. So I really like this, users must start a thread. Not all people use it, and it's completely up to you. I just want you to know that it's available. Going on down to availability, there's two sets of dates in the discussion board, and this is typically a point of confusion for most. Availability controls visibility. Can the student see it or not? Okay, and you have your options here. Locking options control whether the student can post and reply. They can see it, they can see the post exists, or they can see that the topic exists, but they cannot interact with it. I really prefer locking options because I never want to take content away from the students. They can always have that opportunity to go back and read, but I don't accept late work either. So creating end dates on my discussion topics allows me to say, you have to post by this date. Now, if you notice, there's only one end date for the locking options. So it's not uncommon for instructors to say, you must post by Wednesday and then reply to 3 peers by Sunday. Very common. Unfortunately, there's not a way to give them that Wednesday due date as well. That's something that you have to maintain as the instructor, but just something to be aware of. So availability controls visibility. Locking options controls whether they can start a thread or post a reply. And I always recommend locking options. Okay. In the assessment tab, this is again our opportunity to connect this particular discussion to the gradebook. Now you see here again, we don't have any grade items for discussions, but we again can create one. I can click new grade item. I can label it in my consistent manner. Discussions are not as much as Dropboxes, so I'm going to leave that for 10 and click save. I'm then going to click, I'm going to enter 10 here in the score out of. Again, the rubric is hugely helpful in the discussion board. I'm always an advocate of creating a discussion board rubric so that you and your students are both being transparent about what your expectations are. And we can help you build rubrics to articulate that this set of components is required of their initial post, and then this set of components is required for their replies. We can have all of that inside of one rubric. The student's able to see how they've progressed through the post, and you're able to see how students perform. It's hugely, hugely handy. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save and Close. So now you see that my weekly discussions is my forum. There's no action items here, but it is housing my weekly forum or my weekly topics. And then my week 1 discussion is where my students are going to interact. My students simply click on the topic title, they can post threads, which are their original posts, and they can reply to their peers. So let's put this back into our content tool. So I'm going to click on content. Using my add existing activities, I'm in week 1 here. Add existing activities, I'm going to choose my tool, choose my forum, and then choose my topic. And again, my topic is here, and look, my instructions that articulate the prompt or the scenario, as well as my expectations, are all readily available for my students. So essentially, I've created a weekly checklist for my students, and they can easily navigate. Everything is consistently named, it's related to one another, everything is signifying that this is assignment 1 in week 1. Everything is consistent and intuitive. Okay, so we've created a Dropbox, we've created a discussion board. Let's talk briefly about assessments. So this is our quiz tool. Quizzes are the most expandable tool in D2L, and by that I mean that there's a lot of options. We have 12 different question types. You can have timed quizzes, untimed, graded, ungraded, and the list goes on and on. We unfortunately don't have a lot of time to go through the quiz tool in this particular webinar, but we do have several other training and webinar opportunities for quizzes specifically, because it's a hugely expansive tool. It can get a little bit complicated, but we are here to help. Anytime you have a question or want to facilitate a quiz, we can help with that. We can also import in questions from test bank publishers or quizzes that you've created yourself. We actually have opportunities to take a Word document and translate it into D2L as a quiz. So please reach out if you have questions about quizzes. Just want to tell you what a quiz looks like briefly. Okay, so from here I'm going to click the new quiz button. And before you're able to progress through any of the other quiz setup, you have to give the quiz a name. And then you see these tabs up at the top. I just want to touch on each of them briefly. The Properties tab houses your quiz questions. So how many questions are in the quiz, what order, what's the pagination, how many questions are on a page, can the student move back or forward, all that good stuff about just question and navigation. The Restrictions tab houses due dates. Now, this is different. Dates in the quiz tool can be tricky, so I just want to go over them. A due date for the quiz means that the student has to have completed the quiz by this date. Availability controls whether a student can start a quiz. Okay, so what do I mean by that? It's not uncommon for a quiz to be open for a week. Maybe it opens on Monday and closes the following Sunday night. So if I choose that my quiz is going to open on Monday morning, maybe 8 a.m., and it's going to end the following Sunday night at 11:59, what this means is the student will always see that the quiz exists, but they will not be able to start the quiz until on Monday at 8 a.m. Now, conversely, they can actually start the quiz as early or as late as Sunday at 11:58 and still get the full time limit. So that's something to be aware of. The end date does not end access to the quiz, and it does not stop the quiz from running. The end date stops the student's ability to start or begin taking the quiz. Okay, it actually, these two dates control the button labeled Start Quiz. So be very clear about that. Status controls whether or not the student sees that the quiz exists. So this is very similar to draft or published. An inactive quiz is a draft or hidden from students. There's no mechanism to change it from inactive to active. That's something that you would have to do manually. So because of that, I always say let's choose active and then use the availability dates to control whether or not the student can enter into the quiz at all. Now on down the Restrictions tab, you have some password and IP restrictions. Those are used in special cases, so I wouldn't explore that just yet. But we do have access to timing. So again, you can have a timed or untimed quiz. Untimed quizzes just mean that you have maybe a recommended time limit, but you don't necessarily care how long that takes. They could take 2 hours or 2 days, and you can let them back in as many times as you want. An enforced time limit means that I'm going to give the students, and for this example, I'm going to use 30 minutes. So the students, once they click Start Quiz, the timer for 30 minutes begins. Then they'll have that entire 30 minutes. Then they get confronted with a grace period. I always put a 1 here because essentially that's giving them 31 minutes in the quiz. After 31 minutes, you get to decide what happens. You've got 3 options. You can allow them to continue working. So this option is going to say, I'll allow them to complete the quiz in as much time as it takes, but I will penalize or take off points for people who exceed. I'm not going to stop the quiz. They can keep going, but I want them to know that I will take points off after 30 minutes. I can prevent the student from making further changes. Well, that means that the quiz stops. It doesn't submit. It's not submitting on behalf of the student, but the quiz is frozen. The student can't answer any options. They can't change any other answers. All they can do at that point is stop the quiz, or is submit the quiz. This is typically the option I recommend because otherwise the other 2 options give the student a little bit more flexibility. The third option is allow student continue working, but automatically score the attempt as 0. So this is a little bit more strict compared to the first option, which is I'm going to allow my student continue working, but I'll still accept their score. This third option says I'll allow the student to continue working, but they're going to get a 0. So you can manually override this, but again, you have to determine what you want to upkeep and manage in your class. So prevent student from making further changes, typically what I recommend. Okay. Quickly, I want to go over the assessment. This is, again, your opportunity to connect the quiz to the gradebook. I can allow the D2L to automatically grade. This is going to allow D2L to give me the score that D2L has checked against the answer key. Selecting a grade item, just as we've done for discussion and Dropbox, can connect this quiz to the gradebook. And this auto export allows D2L to send the grades automatically over to the gradebook. And you have complete control of all 3 of these options. You also have the ability to allow multiple attempts. The default is set to 1 attempt, but you can allow up to 10 or unlimited. If you allow more than 1, you then have this overall grading calculation that displays, where you give the student, you get to select which grade is calculated. Lastly, submission views is your opportunity to release quiz scores and quiz results to the student. So by default, students see only the grade that they made on the quiz. But as the instructor, using either the default view, which means automatically after the student submits, or an additional view, which means maybe later on, maybe next week, you can actually choose to release questions that the student answered incorrectly. So maybe you want to give them only the answers, or you want to show them only the questions they answered incorrectly. You also have the ability to show them the question answers. So this is something that you want to think about. Do you want to show them the question answers, or do you want to show them only the questions they answered incorrectly? Or do you want to show them the whole thing? Totally up to you, but you can configure those settings in the Submission Views tab of your quiz. Okay, and that's all there is to it for creating a quiz. Now again, it can be it can be as complex or as simple as you make it. You can have up to, there's an unlimited number of questions. There are 12 question types. Most of them can be graded automatically by D2L. It is important to note that the quiz tool is not associated with Turnitin, so we can't do that originality checking on the quiz tool. Okay, I'm going to save and close out of here so I can see that I have a quiz here ready to go. And using again that add existing activities, I'm able to place my quiz into my content tool. So again, all of my assignments can be placed into that weekly content module so the student can flip through and see what they have. So let's talk quickly about the gradebook. The gradebook is found under the evaluation tool, and it has 2 different views. Now, if you keep in mind, we have created an assignment or a Dropbox and a discussion board grade item. If you remember, we used that new grade item link. The gradebook has 2 views. Enter grades is the ability to enter grades. That's it. You can only enter grades on the enter grade screen. You can't change any grades you can't change any grade items, reorder. You can't even create grade items or columns in your gradebook. This enter grade screen is purely for entering grades. There's two ways that you can view the enter grade screen. This is called spreadsheet view. Spreadsheet view allows you to come in here and literally place a grade into a grade item. Standard view, it's asking me to save my changes. Standard view does not allow you to enter grades. It's basically just showing you your grade book. This is advantageous because keep in mind that this assignment 1 and discussion 1, those are tied to or associated with those learning activities. So I want to be hands-off. I'm not entering my grades here. I'm grading in the learning activity. I'm grading in the Dropbox. I'm grading in the discussion board. So I kind of want to be hands-off here. So I recommend staying in this standard view. That way that you're not accidentally mistyping in the student grade book or making any sort of accidental mistakes. Manage grades is where you truly control the essence of your grade book. So I'm going to click manage grades here. And you can see a list of your grade items, what kind of grade item you've created, if it's connected anywhere in the learning environment, and what it's connected to. So I can click on inside of the association column, this little question mark icon, and it will tell me exactly this is associated with a Dropbox folder. The Dropbox folder is named assignment 1. So I'm able to at a glance see kind of the state of affairs that is my grade book. This is a fabulous way to keep track of your course. And this is one of our best practices that we support. Always make sure that your manage grades page is an exact reflection of the grading distribution that you've outlined in your syllabus. You don't want to wait until the end of the semester to find out that your gradebook isn't calculating correctly, that you've missed an item, that something is in there, it's duplicated. You want to make sure that this manage grades page is the exact replica of what you've outlined in your syllabus in terms of what you're going to be assessing your students on. This page also allows you to create columns or items in your gradebook. D2L has two different ways to create a gradebook. You can create categories, which is just grouping mechanisms, or you can create items. Items are simply columns in your gradebook. You need to have items. It's optional to have categories, so it's totally up to you. There are two different types of gradebooks. We have a weighted gradebook and a points-based gradebook. So whatever you feel comfortable with is what I would recommend that you use. Sometimes you have a departmental policy that dictates what kind of gradebook, so always refer back to that. But you can simply create items by choosing new item. The majority of the time you'll choose numeric, and that just anticipates that you will enter in a number grade for the student. And you're able to give it a name and then give it a maximum point, and if you have a weighted gradebook, a weight. And after that, you can just click save and close. And again, on that managed grade screen, you see that my new item is here, but it is not connected to my gradebook, or it's not connected to learning activities in the learning environment. If I need to delete a gradebook item, I have to come up here to more actions and choose delete from the screen. Now, what you may notice is that I'm able to delete this item that I just created, my new item, but I'm not able to delete my assignment 1 or my discussion 1. That is because you are not able to delete gradebook items that are associated to learning activities. If I were to need to delete this assignment 1, let's say that I'm not going to use that in my course any longer, I would need to first delete this Dropbox and then come back, return to the gradebook, and delete the grade item. So 2 actions need to happen in order for an associated gradebook item to be deleted. You need to either delete or disconnect the association and then return to the gradebook and delete the item. It's not something that can be done in one step. So that is an introduction to the gradebook. The last thing I want to show you is how to email your students. So I'm going to come back here. I'm circling back here to the communication link group, and I'm going to go to class list. Class list is going to be populated by our student information system. So if a student registers for your class, he or she is then placed into the course as a student. You also have the persons who are labeled as instructors, as well as guests or other options. To email your class list, you can simply click the Email Class List button. This is going to present you with a confirmation screen that says, we are getting ready to email these particular students. So from here, I click Send Email, and D2L automatically populates an email. I'm able to change my subject line. I'm able to type out an email. And once I'm finished, I just click Send. And D2L will send out emails. Now, if you send out an email in D2L, you will receive replies in your ETSU Outlook 365 account. So D2L email is outgoing only. You'll never receive emails in D2L, but you can send them out. The same for your students. Students can send you an email in D2L, but you'll receive it in your Outlook 365 account. Okay. If you want to email an individual student, I'm going to go back to the class list here, so communication class list. I'll choose a particular student, just selecting the checkbox to the left, and then click the email action item link. Clicking that email action item will place the student in the To field, and then I can update my subject and enter in the body of my email and click Send once I'm ready. All right, well, that's all there is to it. I hope that you found this helpful. So I just want to overview everything that we covered. We covered the content tool, how to add content, delete content, rename content, and some ideas about how to structure content. We created a Dropbox, a discussion forum, a discussion topic, and the outer workings of a quiz. We also created some grade items and a news announcement. So that's a lot to cover. So feel free to go back, watch this webinar as many times as you want. You can reach out to our office if you would like some more individualized help or attention, and we are more than happy to help you and guide you through your experience here at ETSU using D2L. We do have a couple of websites and resources that I can share with you. We have the ETSU YouTube page, and I'll go ahead and share my screen one more time just to show you those. So you can go to etsu.edu/D2L. This is our D2L help main page. We have it broken into instructors and into students. And this is going to give you all of our written documentation and guides for a specific tool. So if you wanted some more help on building quizzes, you can, within our evaluation menu, choose the assessment tool and then work through creating questions, quizzes, and even grading and managing quizzes. So this is a fairly robust information resource website that houses all of our ETSU D2L tutorials and content. We also have an ETSU YouTube channel that is specific to D2L. We have uploaded all of our own videos. We have created playlists, so if you're new to D2L, you can watch these videos on a particular tool that introduces you, gives you a brief introduction to each tool. If you wanted to dive deeper into a particular tool like the Dropbox playlist will allow you to view videos that cover creating, grading, and managing Dropboxes and Dropbox assignments. And we have video playlists for content grades and some other items as well. So feel free to explore our channel to see if you need a video about a particular topic in D2L. If there's something that we don't have resources available on, please reach out to us and request those. We love hearing from you, and we love being able to support and provide resources that are helpful to faculty that you can get in an asynchronous format. So maybe you aren't able to attend a webinar or an in-person workshop, but you do need some help outside of our working hours. These types of resources are excellent for that. The last thing I want to show you, though, is our ATS page. So this is ATS is Academic Technology Services. This is the central location for online course building, instructional design support, and multimedia training. So we have all different kinds of resources available to you in terms of gearing up to teach, whether it's teaching online, being more comfortable with multimedia and technology in the classroom, creating videos, creating interactive content, whatever it is that you want to create or feel a need to create, we can help you create step by step. So feel free to contact us in any way. Myself and my colleagues are always happy to help, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. All right. From here, I'm going to go ahead and